And welcome to the latest episode of All on the Table. I am Phatter Phil, and with me, as always, is Fat Adam. Today, as part of the Reviews from the Crypt series from Game It All, we will be presenting a game that is near and dear to my heart. When I was a teenager, just starting to get into the role-playing games, this was one of the first games that I latched onto, like Grim Death, and just consumed voracious amounts of it.
Which makes sense considering the game.
It's a good game. So the series we'll be talking about today, we'll be talking about an entire game line. The old World of Darkness game line that was created by White Wolf Studios back in the day. White Wolf Studios was founded by a group of people, notably Mark Reinhagen and Justin Achille, and they developed a series of horror-based role-playing games where you got to... Whereas most role-playing games were traditional, you were the hero fighting the monsters. In this one, it was set in the modern day, and you got to be the monster. Mm-hmm. But it was more of a storytelling game of horror, personal horror. So, without further ado, the first game of the line, the one that started it all, is Vampire the Masquerade. Now, this particular version of the book is the revised edition, which was the last edition of the game to come out before the line folded originally.
Yeah.
It actually, like, you can't see it, but there's actually the rose on the front. There's a faded rose underneath it, and then another faded rose in the background underneath that, representing that it's the third edition of the game.
It's a good idea.
Now, in Vampire the Masquerade, you are a vampire, an immortal creature who drinks blood. Vampires in the World of Darkness are probably one of my favorite versions of vampires, mostly because of their set power, the way that they work mechanically. Mm-hmm. Vampires from the World of Darkness have the traditional vampiric weaknesses of sunlight and cutting off their head and fire. They all hurt them more than conventional weapons. Mm-hmm. However, a stake through the heart doesn't kill them. It just immobilizes them as long as the stake is there.
Yep. And
anything holy, like a cross or anything, doesn't work unless your character is actually, you take a flaw when you build your character to make yourself more susceptible, or someone has a power that makes it happen. Usually it's called true faith.
That's fair.
It means that you believe in whatever you're doing so much that it has a holy effect. My book, you'll see the gorgeous lines of duct tape along the side here, and it has no more central binding. I have had this book since it came out, since it was first printed, and trust me when I say it's seen some damn mileage. This book was printed in '98, so I've had it since then. Now, the cool thing about the World of Darkness books, other than Vampire the Masquerade, is all of them have either a little story at the beginning. You can see there's like the pages and illustrations, little stories. Some of them, most of them have the story intro. Some of them, like the Werewolf, have like a comic in it as well. Either the story or the comic.
And the comics are fairly brutal in most of them.
A lot of them, yeah.
I like it.
You're not wrong. Well, it is a horror series.
That's it.
It's not cookie cutter. It's not kid friendly. I would definitely say that this game line, some of the ones where you play the monsters, like Vampire, Werewolf, are definitely mature players. Like, not necessarily like adults, like teenagers could play it. We played it when we were teenagers mostly. But I would definitely recommend the entire World of Darkness line for mature players.
This would not be a way to introduce your kids to role-playing.
Not with some of them you could, but not most of them. So there was a huge amount of game lines with the World of Darkness. Vampire was the first one. Now, when you play a vampire, they call themselves the Kindred. They do have a common origin, a mythology, if you will. as of themselves. All of the games do. Vampires' mythology is that back in biblical era, when Cain slew Abel, Cain was cursed by God to be the first vampire. And therefore, all vampires are descended from him in the biblical story. Cain became lonely, and he made 3 vampires, and they then made 13 more. And then something happened that the 13 rose up and slew the 3 because they were either they wanted their power, they were jealous of Cain's affection for them or whatever. And then Cain came back and cursed all of the 13, and then decided that he has to leave now because vampires have ruined everything for him. So it is prophesied that someday Cain will return during the end times, which are called Gehenna, and him and the original 13 vampires will rise and devour all the other vampires and basically destroy the world.
Wow.
So that's like the mythology of Vampire the Masquerade. It takes place in the modern day for the most part. Not that you can't roleplay flashbacks and things like that.
Of course.
Now all of the World of Darkness games have a common character options. The main one is that in Vampire the Masquerade, there are 13 different kinds of vampires. Each of them descended from those 13 vampires that pissed Cain off so much.
Yep.
Each of them have a different, I guess you could say, gimmick, a different they're a different kind of vampire from mythology.
Yep. Which will also create a different playstyle, because some of them are visually just god-awful.
Yeah.
One of them in particular, you always look god-awful.
Yeah, that's one of them. So the 13 clans, they call themselves the clans, are divided into 2 sects. The first sect is the Camarilla, and they're the ones who want to rule the humans from the shadows, and they make everyone believe, they try to convince everyone that Cain is just a fairy tale. Then you have the Sabbat. The Sabbat basically don't want to rule from the shadows. They want to rule openly and over humanity, and they don't care about what's called the Masquerade. And then finally, you have other clans that are just not in any sect. They're called the Independents. Now, the title of the game is Vampire the Masquerade. The reason why is because vampires have these laws, these 6 laws that they call the Masquerade, that they uphold so that humans will never know that vampires are real. Because the last time humans suspected vampires were real was during the Inquisition, and vampires got to see what would really happen if humans found out about the supernatural and decided to do something about it.
Yep.
And a lot of vampires died. A lot of them. Way more than they were comfortable with. So then they established a council and created the Camarilla. The Sabbat were created in opposition to the Camarilla, kind of a reactionary thing. They were like, no, we're not going to let you assholes rule over us. We want to do what we want to do. And Cain's going to come back and kill you all, so we might as well help him do his job for him. So the different clans that you can play are... there's 13 of them. So the first one is called the Bruja. The Bruja are a clan of former philosophers. You see that's their clan symbol right here. They are a clan of former philosophers, now turned into pure rebels and anarchists.
Hence
They're
the upside down anarchy symbol.
essentially, yeah. It's a V, so it's a V vampire, right? Their weakness is that they can fly into a rage at any moment. So that's their weakness. The next clan here is my personal favorite, Clan Gangrel. You'll see the symbol here. It's like a wolf's head. Clan Gangrel are vampires who are more animalistic in nature. They their weakness, they're solitary. They like the nature and the wild. They like to hunt predatorily. Their weakness is whenever they frenzy, whenever they lose control of themselves as a vampire, they gain a feature of an animal, and then eventually it starts hurting your appearance, and you start getting negatives to your social stats and things like that. And
is it a permanent trait that shows
it's
up?
permanent, yeah.
Wow.
In canon, the Gangrel leave the Camarilla shortly after the release of the revised book and story, because the leader of the Gangrel believes that the Camarilla lied to them about the 13 ancient vampires, and he's like, no, if you won't listen to me, then I'll leave and take everybody with me. So most of the Gangrel leave the Camarilla and become an independent clan. But I love them. I think that thematically they're the most interesting. They're the funnest to play. Then the next clan is a fan favorite for a lot of people. Their symbol is a cracked mirror. They are Clan Malkavian.
Yep.
Their flaw is that they are all certifiably insane. But they're not funny insane. They're not like, oh, that guy is crazy insane. They're like, shit, that guy is scary crazy. Now, why would you want this? Why would you want to be this crazy? Because the Malkavians are also known to be oracular. They can see the future. They can see patterns and things where you can't catch. That's why they're all crazy. The being able to have such insight drives them mad. Then you have the one that Adam mentioned earlier, Clan Nosferatu, which is kind of like a tragedy symbol, for a theater tragedy symbol. Clan Nosferatu are information brokers and peddlers. They're masters of stealth and deception.
And they kind of need to be masters of stealth because they look like shit.
Their clan flaw is that they are all hideous. Your appearance stat, if you're a member of Clan Nosferatu, is always a 0, and it cannot change. You can use powers to mask it, but eventually it'll come through. Nosferatus are all hideous. The next clan is the Toreador. You'll see their symbol here is a rose. Toreador are the clan that are the closest to human society and culture. They blend in with humans the most, and they are patrons of the arts. Clan Toreador are, for the most part, all vain and artistically inclined. Their weakness, however, is that if they see something that they truly find beautiful, it immobilizes them and paralyzes them, and they can do nothing but stare at it, and it can put them in danger. There's been a story of more than one Toreador who has stared at something beautiful, and then the sun has risen and killed them because they couldn't take their gaze off of it.
Do you have to pick something in the beginning?
You pick a clan.
No, if you pick Toreador, do you have to pick an object that you know is going to be considered that beautiful that could fuck you over?
More like an art style or something like that.
Renaissance painting or something?
Yeah.
Anytime you see a great Renaissance painting...
Yeah, it's something specific usually.
Interesting.
Then you have Clan Tremere. Their symbol is kind of like this occult-looking circle, triangle, square thing.
I always kind of like Tremere.
Tremere are a new clan. The thing that sets them apart is they were not one of the original 13.
Yeah.
Their leader in the Dark Ages killed and used a magical ritual. They used to be mages. He used a magical ritual to turn himself into a vampire and then stole that vampire's essence, turning him into a clan. Now, the big thing about Tremere is they're all blood sorcerers. They are all mages. But they use... they're not like regular mages like in the other World of the rest of the World of Darkness. They use specifically blood magic, which is its own thing. Their weakness is that every last Tremere is bonded by blood. Basically, a blood bond is kind of like a form of slavery, vampiric slavery, where if you feed them your blood, they become loyal to you and infatuated to you. If you feed it to them 3 times, then that bond is stronger than love, and they will do anything for you. All Tremere are bonded to someone higher up on them in the pyramid scheme of the Tremere, by 1 step. So if you get to 3rd step, you're...
Yep.
You will then that's the Tremere weakness, is you are somebody's bitch. And that
sounds like quite a few people's bitch.
And finally, the last clan from the Camarilla, you'll see their symbol is a scepter. It's the Clan Ventru. They are also a clan that is deeply involved in human society. However, they're more in they're in the political side.
Yeah,
business and politics.
Yeah.
They consider themselves the clan of leaders. They consider themselves the kingship clan. They believe that they are the ones who are meant to rule over vampiric society because of who they are. And they're all very power brokery, Wall Street types, mafioso sometimes.
Yeah.
Anything that has a hierarchy of power and someone has to be the leader, Ventru are drawn towards it. Their clan weakness is that they are so sophisticated that even their taste is, and they have to choose only a specific kind of person that they can drink blood from. So, blonde-haired girls between 20 and 30.
Mm-hmm.
And if you drink any other blood other than whatever you've chosen, you gain no sustenance from it whatsoever. It has to be the specific kind of blood you want. It's a huge weakness, actually. I could go through the rest of them, but it would take all night, and I want to talk about the other game lines.
Yep.
But there are another...
that's a really good assortment of the clans.
Yeah, that's the Camarilla. Those are the main clans that you're supposed to play as a player. You could play Sabat clans, but they're crazy.
It's hard to tie in picking a Sabat clan if you're playing in a Camarilla campaign.
It's very difficult. Actually, the game I'm running now, someone wanted to play a Tzimisce and someone wanted to play La Sombra, and they're both Sabat clans, and I wanted to run a Camarilla game. So they have to be like probationary members of the Camarilla, and if anyone finds out their dark secret, they're dead.
Yep.
They'll just be killed.
There's no second chances with vampires.
No, usually not. So yeah, there's the Sabat have two clans. I'll just explain them real quick. The La Sombra, which are kind of like the Ventru, but more underhanded, and they have a little bit more of a religious tint to them because they're from Spain, and they have power over the shadows. They can manipulate shadows, and their clan weakness is they have no reflection. Then there's the Tzimisce. The Tzimisce are freaks. They're like originally from Transylvania, so any Transylvanian vampires are originally Tzimisce for the most part. Their powers are they craft people's flesh, and like they alter themselves and make themselves look all different and weird. But those powers can also help you because you can get bone claws, and eventually you can turn into this weird hook horror thing. And
so freaky to even say.
Oh, they're freakish. They're
I would create like a giant human ball of flesh.
A lot of them want to basically
people
evolve themselves, and in games and things, like games that are based on the World of Darkness, like video games, when you see a Tzimisce, they like to like make furniture and homes out of people. They craft them, like they'll craft someone into a chair or a table, and that person will still be alive.
Well, that's even worse.
Yeah.
I assumed they were dead.
No.
Nice.
No,
so
that
you're living in a house full of living people.
That they've turned into their furniture or their curtains or whatever. Like
I can see that being very fun.
Someone, there was one Tzimisce who created a musical instrument out of someone, and it's basically their rib cage. And whenever they would touch a bone, the person would scream in a certain note. So they would make music that way. Yeah, the Tzimisce are insane. They're sick. They're really twisted. Their actual clan weakness is dates back to the Transylvanian thing. They got cursed so that they must always have a patch of dirt from their homeland, wherever you're from, with you at night, or else you gain like huge penalties unless you sleep around a patch of dirt from wherever you're from.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty damning weakness, because it'd be hard to bring that entire patch of dirt with you.
They usually just sew it into their clothes, or wear a necklace with a pouch of dirt around them, or it's in their
lair. Make a human into a backpack and put the dirt in it.
You say that, but
I'd probably do it.
It probably happen.
Don't lie.
So those are the main members of the Sabat. Then there's 4 independent clans, mainly. The Assamites are basically Arabic assassins. They're incredibly good with the power of stealth and how to manipulate their blood into poison, things like that. Their weakness is they only gain sustenance from vampiric blood. Then
That's
there's
a huge no-no too in the vampire world, isn't it?
For the most part, yeah. You're not supposed to drink from other vampires. Then you have the followers of Set. Their gimmick is they worship Set, the ancient Egyptian god from Egyptian mythology. Apparently, he was one of the 13, and they all worship him. They're all peddlers in vice. So, like, you want drugs, you want a hooker, you want anything like that, they can
The
provide.
Grand Theft Auto peddlers.
They can provide it to you. No, like more like a kind of a sleazy kind of. I wouldn't say con artist type of way, but almost. They're like pimp sleazy, like a sleazy pimp.
Sleazy pimps,
right? But they all worship Set, so they all have that deep
sleazy
cultist.
Set pimps.
They have that deep cultist religion thing going on. Their weakness is they hate any kind of light, any kind of bright light, not just sunlight, but like they hate moonlight, they hate like artificial light or anything like that. They always like wear shades or cover themselves and things like that. The third clan is the Giovanni. The Giovanni were not originally, they're like the Tremere, they weren't originally a clan. They were a family of merchants from Venice, and they were also necromancers.
Mm-hmm.
They met a clan called the Cappadocians, and the head of their family got turned into a vampire by the leader of the Cappadocians, and then he eventually killed him and took his power, and then he just turned his entire family into vampire necromancers.
Great!
So imagine like a mafia family that they're all vampires and they can all communicate with the dead, right? But the twist about the Giovanni is they're also pretty much all incestual as fuck. So they like to keep it in the family, as it were. Yeah.
They're like the Deep South vampires.
They're sophisticated Italian merchants.
They're like the Deep South is sophisticated Italian vampires.
They're actually really cool. They're one of my favorite clans. They got a great gimmick. I love the gimmick. I love that gimmick. I think it's fantastic.
Good flavor.
And then finally, there's the Ravnos clan. The Ravnos clan are a clan of descended from India, but they're also kind of like a gypsy-like. So they're like shysters and tricksters and con artists, like real con artists.
Okay, they'd be fun to play.
They're the Giovanni clan weakness is normally a vampire's bite is pleasurable. It's like super intensely orgasmic pleasure, but a Giovanni's bite is actually hurts. So that's their weakness. And then finally, there's the Ravnos. Their powers focus on illusions, and their clan flaw is you have to pick a vice that you indulge in. So a lot of people say like, "Oh, you mean I pick a crime that I commit?" No, not it's specifically a vice.
Like opium. Would opium be considered a vice?
It would be, but vampires can't consume it. They'd have to drink the blood of someone who consumes it.
So they want to.
That's how they would get it.
Would be that they would drink the blood of somebody who does cocaine.
It could be cocaine. It could be opium, but they would have to drink it from a person who's used it to get the effect. But it's more like along the lines of sometimes it's petty theft. Some people have gone the joke route with like jaywalking, but like that's stupid.
If you're gonna play it right.
Play it serious, you know. So yeah, that's the Ravnos. The thing about the Ravnos is. The entire World of Darkness has like a meta plot that ran through the series. All of the books in World of Darkness have a thing in common. They're all preparing for an apocalypse of some kind. Vampire the Masquerade is preparing for Gehenna, which is the end of the world for vampires. There's this period of time where people were like the Camarilla were like, oh, they're not real. The 13 founding clans vampires are called the Antediluvians, because they were around before the biblical flood, and they survived the biblical flood. So they're like, the antediluvians aren't real. Okay, Cain's not real, don't worry about it. And then in 1999, Ravnos woke up. He decided, like, Gehenna was starting. Ravnos woke up. He devastated India. It took 4 incredibly powerful supernatural entities to fight him, and he was kicking their ass. Because he had the mastery over illusions, he could make illusions real, so he just summoned demons and fucking things to fight them and just went crazy.
Fun, bitches!
They tried to beat him, they couldn't. Then, the mages decided to step in, and they had these satellites in orbit that had nukes in them, and he fired 4 nukes at him, and he was still standing. Then, in the spirit world, there was this war going on amongst the spirits in the spirit world, because that's another game line we'll talk about later. And they decided, at the same time they were fighting something else, and coincidentally they fired the ghost. How the spirit world works is if it dies in the real world, if it's destroyed in the real world, it gets born in the spirit world. So they used the ghost of one of the nuclear bombs that they dropped on Hiroshima, and they launched that at their enemies in the spirit world. So that's the 5th nuke, because it spiritually resounded to him. And that still wasn't enough. He was still standing, like he was like, whatever.
He was beat up, but he was still going.
He was still going, and then they were like, one of the supernatural beings parted the clouds, and a ray of sunlight hit him, and that was enough to kill him.
So it was 5 nukes and then sunlight.
Yeah, the nukes, they said the nukes were like, they're like spiritual nukes.
Yeah.
And they created like miniature suns. So it took like the light of 5 suns to fucking drop them. So then the Camarilla, when they found out about it, they tried to do the cover up as much as they possible. But when Ravnos died, all the Ravnos that were around, every single Ravnos, which there would have been like about maybe 3,000 or 4,000 of them, they all just went crazy and started killing each other. Just eating each other and killing each other and sucking each other's blood in uncontrollable frenzies. And now there's only maybe a couple hundred left. So the clan's damn near decimated. And
if a Ravnos runs into another Ravnos, do they still?
No, not anymore. Not anymore. It was just like for a whole night. Whole night. So yeah, so the Ravnos are on the brink of extinction, and the Camarilla decided to cover it all up. But they now know, like this, the leaders of the Camarilla now know that shit, it's real.
Yeah.
The antediluvians are real.
We can cover it up, but fuck.
And Ravnos was not considered one of the most powerful ones either. Like, that's the thing. Like, he was powerful, but please. Ravnos couldn't hold a candle to like the original Bruja. Original Bruja antediluvian has the power to alter time.
Well, fuck.
So yeah, like Ravnos couldn't.
Oh, I'm about to die. I'll go back to life.
The Malkavian antediluvian is actually they believe that he's something called the Mind Madness Network. Every Malkavian has a connection to this kind of hive mind type thing, and they're saying that hive mind that connects them all is actually the consciousness of the antediluvian. So he can control all of the members of his clan in one shot, if he really wants to.
Targeted murder.
No, not even that, man. He just, like, every single Malkavian, let's say there's, like, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 of them, every single Malkavian works in unison like a hive.
That's the thing. He would just target one clan, wipe them out before they even realize.
Yeah, it's perfect coordination.
Yeah.
Right? They all talk as one. But yeah, so Vampire has a huge meta plot. All of the World of Darkness books have a huge meta plot. I love Vampire a lot. The tagline for Vampire is it is a storyline of personal horror. It's not superheroes with fangs. It's not like you go out there and you kick the shit out of werewolves and stuff like that. No. The point of Vampires, there's a stat in the book called humanity. And every character starts with a rating in humanity. 6 and 7 is average, human. Anything above a 7 is you are saintly. Like it goes up to 10. Like 10 is like Jesus Christ. Saintly.
Jesus
like you
Christ,
are
vampire.
you can't even swat a mosquito. Like you are saintly. Anything below 6 you start being more of a degenerate and you start being more mean. 5 is like you're mean and abusive. 4 is like you beat people regularly. 3 is like you're goddamn borderline serial killer. You know, you have no empathy whatsoever. Yeah. And then 1 is like you're a raving animal. You have no humanity. You are just a creature of pure raving animal. You're just a serial killer and a rapist. Like, you just no regard. So, when you do things as a vampire, like feeding off of other people, or having to kill someone, or whatever it might require of you, you take shots to your humanity. And the point of role-playing in Vampire is you have to role-play your descent and your attempt to... You have to role-play like, oh my god, what am I doing? You know? Or you try to go back to be a nicer person. But fuck, damn, I'm hungry. I really have to eat that person. I really have to feed. Oh, shit. And that's the whole point.
Shit.
Like, you have to try and role play that you don't want to be a monster, but you are. And the point is trying not to be a monster. That's the true challenge of role-playing vampire. It's a game of personal horror. Now, after Vampire, there was a series of other books that were released from the World of Darkness. The second book that was ever released was called Werewolf the Apocalypse. In this game, you guessed it, play a werewolf. Again,
Oh, I just made a cat noise.
the same concept. What?
Luke wants us to look into that just for the future. Just a heads up, we just got a message. It's a brand new RPG. It was funded in 38 minutes.
Oh, okay.
It's called the Modern Mythic RPG.
Right.
So you're a werewolf.
Yeah, so you're a werewolf, and again, like in Vampire, there's 13 different tribes of werewolf, so you can be 13 different kinds of werewolves. I'm not going to go into detail, but there's like werewolves who are leaders, there's werewolves who
Well, I'm
are
assuming they all
expert
have weaknesses
in
as well.
spiritual things. No, actually, they don't really have weaknesses. They all have just things that they're better at than others.
Oh, okay.
There are other books that came out, like a storyteller's guide and a player's guide, that offer optional weaknesses for each of the tribes, but you don't really need them.
Oh, okay.
Now, the werewolf tagline is it's a storytelling game of savage horror. It's werewolves in this mythology are the children of Gaia, which is the Earth, Mother Earth, nature itself, and Gaia is the Earth. The universe is comprised of three forces that oversee them: the Wild, the Weaver, and the Worm. In the original times, the Wild is the force of creation, the Weaver is the force of making, the force of turning raw creation into things, and then the Worm is the force of entropy. It destroys so that the Wild can now make something else.
That's fair.
So, during this time, the Weaver was looking, and it was like, the Wild is making things too fast. I can't weave them all into something. I can't turn them all into something. So, the Wild decided to... so the Weaver tried to trap the Wild, but it couldn't. The Wild is pure destruction. It is pure force. It is pure creation. Anytime it would try to trap, it would just create itself out, or create a hole, or
come up with some
make
sort of
more
escape plan,
make more stuff, right?
Yeah.
You can't stop the Wild from doing that. So the Weaver, frustrated, decided to look around and say, well, it doesn't matter if the Wild makes stuff. If I have the time to weave it all, then it won't matter. So if I stop the Worm from destroying things, then maybe I'll have enough time to make everything. So it decides to trap the Worm instead. When it does, it successfully does so, but the Worm, being force of destruction, and just tries to thrash itself out and tries to free itself from the Weaver's webs. And eventually it does, but it wounds itself and cuts itself into three pieces. So it's just cycles of threes. You know, the Wild Weaver and the Worm, and then the Worm cuts itself into three pieces. The three pieces are the Beast of War, the Worm's aspect as the Wild, which is pure destruction. There's the Eater of Souls, which is corruption, or destruction for its sake. And then there's the Defiler, which is... Actually, the Defiler's corruption, Eater of Souls is destruction. So, those are three aspects as related to Wild Weaver and the Worm. So the Worm goes crazy and becomes just a pure force of corruption instead of the force of entropy that it once was. This starts creating an unbalance. For that to happen, to fight that, Gaia creates the werewolves to fight the forces of the Worm to try and keep everything in balance again. But eventually, the werewolves have a prophecy where the Worm's minions will become so powerful that it will create the apocalypse. Hence the name of the game, Werewolf the Apocalypse. And you, as a werewolf, are trying to fight back and hold the apocalypse off and hold back the forces of the Worm. Now, it's the hack and slash of the World of Darkness, but it is savage horror. Like, minions of the Worm do not fuck around. There are combat systems within Werewolf the Apocalypse. Like, the combat moves are like evisceration and like ripping guts out and pounding people's noses in.
Yeah.
And when you transform, it's not fun. It hurts. It hurts a lot. But the werewolves have a long tradition. They all have a long tradition of being in these tight-knit groups called tribes. So there's a bunch of them. There's like the Silver Fangs and the Shadow Lords and the Bone Gnars and the Red Talons. And each of them have kind of a gimmick. So like the Silver Fangs think they're the leaders. They're kind of like the Ventru, but they're
like
for
a
the werewolves.
silverback gorilla.
Yeah. Like the Red Talons, they're exclusively from wolf stock, and they think that humans have gone too far, and they're basically all anti-human, so they slaughter people, but they're all born of wolf stock. Then you've got the Children of Gaia, which are kind of like peaceniks. They're kind of like, we shouldn't fight, we should all get along so we can all stop the worm together, and why do we have to fight? And they also try to do peace. And then you've got like the Fianna, which are a bunch of drunken bardic werewolves from Irish folklore. and there's like a whole bunch of them. Like there's 13 tribes, like I said. So you pick your character, you pick your tribe, and then you go from there. And there's like, you pick what moon you were born under, and it determines if you're a warrior, a bard, a spiritualist, prankster, or I don't remember what the last one is. There's a fifth one, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. And then you just play your character in this tribal society. Werewolves don't have the Masquerade. They have a supernatural version of it called the Veil. What it is when humanity was starting to gain more ground, the werewolves were like, we don't like that, so they decided to do what was called the Impergium. The Impergium is like, they hoarded humanity into tribes, and then when the population would get too great, they just fucking kill them. And this is like when they were cavemen and stuff like that. So when that happens so often and for such a long time, that humans have an intrinsic kind of a racial memory of it, and whenever they see a person turn into a werewolf, the veil happens, and it's like a supernatural effect that makes it so that humans remember it as something else, or like a dog attack, or a bear attack, or something else happened. That there's an explanation for that. There's a guy in a costume, or But if you do it enough, eventually people will start remembering. Werewolf the Apocalypse is fun. It's good, but I don't. As a long-running game, it's not.
It's not as good as Vampire.
I find it in little bursts. It's fun. I was a Vampire guy for the most part, but I played a bit of Werewolf too. Werewolf, of course, had a second and a revised edition. Then we have probably my second least favorite.
We all know what our least favorite is. We'll get there. But I will say, yeah. I read up on, I've never actually played Mage the Ascension.
Mage the Ascension.
I did read up on it, though, and I was not impressed with any of it.
It's basically everything like the other two. You're a mage, and there are 13 different orders of mage, which are different kinds of wizards that mages you can be. So there's, like, the Verbena, which are kind of like your witchcraft, like your Wiccan mages, and then there's virtual adepts, which are mages that do their magic through computers. Then there's Sons of Ether, who are like mad scientists mages. A good example of a Son of Ether, Doc Brown from Back to the Future, Son of Ether.
I was going to say Dr. Frankenstein.
No, Dr. Frankenstein would be different, actually, because he'd be an animated tactician.
He'd be almost a necromancer.
He's got a little bit of the Son of Ether thing. They're mad scientists, but anyways, there's a bunch of them. Their gimmick is there's two kinds of mages. There's the regular mages, and then there's the technocrats. The technocrats are an order of mages who want to make reality static. It's not necessarily that they want to get rid of magic; they just want magic to work a certain way. So they turn magic into technology. And because of that, people don't believe in magic anymore. And because reality in the mage world, reality is consensus, it's what people say it is, what everybody believes it is, then magic doesn't work very well. It's called paradox. When a mage uses a magical effect or casts a spell of some kind, they generate what's called paradox, depending on how vulgar the magic is, how showy it is. If you're standing there and you throw a fireball at somebody, reality's going to be like, you can't throw a fireball at someone. You can't shoot fire out of your hands. Mm-hmm. That's magic. That doesn't exist. And paradox goes and bitch slaps the shit out of you and punishes you for it. So they'll either take damage, or if you're vulgar enough, if it's vulgar enough, it could shift you into a hell dimension for 1,000 years and then pop you back out. But for you, it was 1,000 years in a hell dimension. But in the real world, it's like 5 seconds.
Holy fuck!
If it in the most extreme cases.
Yeah. Okay, that would be kind of interesting.
That's why mages
You
have
slowly
to
go insane.
Mages have to do coincidental magic. So you want to throw a fireball at somebody, you can make it so that fireball comes from over there where the gas main exploded, and then the fireball engulfed that instead of you just shooting a fireball at them. Another really good one was a werewolf was chasing these mages, and they got in a car, and then the werewolf was getting on top of the car and was going to start ripping it apart. So one of the mages decided to use the matter power to change the metal that the car was made out of into silver. But he didn't change the paint. It was still under the paint.
Yeah, so as soon as the werewolf touched it...
Nobody knew what he did. Nobody saw it. He wasn't vulgar. But then when the werewolf started ripping the car apart, he would cut himself on all the silver, and it hurt him enough so that they could get away, or they ended up killing him.
Yeah.
So that's what a mage has to do. Otherwise, reality says no. It's interesting. The mages want everyone to believe that magic is real, because when enough people do so, then the ascension will happen, hence the name of the game, Mage the Ascension. And when it does, all of humanity will ascend to a higher purpose or higher plane of existence.
Oh, cool. Do we all become mages?
Magic gets awakened, and
cool.
You could learn to be a mage instead of it having come
I do believe in magic.
Which leads us into the fourth game of the game line, Changeling the Dreaming.
That is the only one that I did not find a whole lot of information about online.
It's also the least popular one.
That would probably be why.
The reason why is because all the other games are kind of like horror feel to them.
Yeah.
Changeling the Dreaming is kind of a game of horror fantasy, but more of an urban lifestyle. Changelings are people who, with the souls of fairies inside them, something happens traumatically to them, and their fairy side manifests. So it could be like an elf, or a troll, or a boggin, or a red cap, or things like that. The thing about changelings, though, is that they need people to dream and be imaginative in order for them to live.
Okay.
They need a force called glamour, which is what's generated when people dream of things, when people fantasize, when people have hopes and dreams. You know, it's not like I'm sleeping, I'm dreaming. It's your dream.
Yeah, like what are you aiming for in life?
You know,
what do you want?
What inspires you?
Yeah.
You know,
it's not like, oh, I'm going to sleep, I dream of dragons. It's like, oh, I want to aspire to be an astronaut someday, so that's my dream. I'm going to reach that dream someday.
Yeah.
I want to have a family.
Well, you know, I dream of dragons works too.
Right? But it wouldn't be as powerful.
But it's not as powerful as a real dream.
That's
right?
it.
Now, the changelings live in two worlds. They live in the regular world and the dreaming. The dreaming is kind of like an overlapping dimension over ours, where creatures of myth and fantasy are actually around and actually real. And changelings interact with these things. These things are called chimeras. The thing is...
there is a lot of story in this one.
Oh, there's tons of story in all of them, man.
But this is like...
Well, it's Changeling. It's about stories.
I was going to say, it's like 20-some pages.
Right? The thing about Changeling, though, is that they get weakened if people don't believe in magic, which comes to the mage thing. So, for Changeling, it's called banality. So someone who doesn't dream anymore, someone who's depressed, someone who's nihilistic, well, they're anathema to a changeling, and they lose their power, they lose their glamour in being around those people. So as a changeling, you have to inspire people, make them feel better about themselves in this crap sack world that is the world of darkness. It's fun. I played it a little bit. I liked it a lot, but it's not a very popular game line. It wasn't a very popular game line. It's not for everyone.
I can picture that.
Yeah, but it was good. It was good. The other game, the fifth game that came out for the World of Darkness that I don't own, sadly, because it's so good, is called Wraith the Oblivion. Wraith the Oblivion is the one with the spirit world that I mentioned earlier, the vampires.
Okay.
Basically,
you don't own it.
It's
Just
hard.
haven't found
It's
it.
so hard to find, man.
And if you do find it, it's probably
it
expensive.
had the lowest print run out of all of them, and like it's goddamn impossible to find.
Without paying an arm and a leg.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could find it online, but I'd be paying
What's it?
$1
You're
million.
going to find it on eBay, but that's it.
Wraith was, long story short, there's a place called the Shadowlands. It's basically the realm of the dead. If you die and you have unfinished business, you show up as a Wraith. Wraiths have this thing called the Shadow, which is basically like your bad side, and your shadow constantly whispers to you to do bad things to the people who you were living with. And the Wraiths try to influence the Skinlands, which is the real world, what they call the Skinlands. And they try to, set things right so that they can finally move on and ascend and go on to their spiritual reward.
That's fair.
The Shadow tries to do the opposite. It tries to create new and more unfinished business for you so that you will slowly descend into oblivion. Whence Wraith the Oblivion, which is unexistence. Wraith is a lot of fun because it takes entirely place in an alternate world. And the thing about the Shadow is what you do is when you create your Wraith, you also create your Shadow. And what you do is you mix all the Shadow characters up together, and then you pass them randomly out to the other players. So the other players, someone else plays your Shadow and you play someone else's Shadow. So you're the devil on their shoulder. so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's very graphic. It's very
Would you consider that to
morbid.
be your second favorite or your first?
I didn't play it enough. I haven't played it enough to even qualify. My favorite World of Darkness game now used to be Vampire, but that's Wraith. Wraith was the second game line to die. Changeling died first, then Wraith died. My favorite World of Darkness game is the next one we're going to talk about. Hunter the Reckoning. I love the shit out of this game. Now, all of these other games, Wraith, Changeling, Mage, Vampire, Werewolf, they're all about being the monster. While in Hunter, you fight the monsters. You are a normal schmuck, a 9-to-5er, an everyday person, and then one day, for no reason whatsoever, you see something. You see something happening. Like someone's mugging somebody. Or you're at a stoplight and someone's standing there. Or you're just a mundane. And then something clicks in your head and you see something written. Like a billboard changes its writing, saying that it is not human. Or inherit the earth, or fight this. And the person who is mugging someone else, you see them as this weird creature with warts and festering pustules and fangs, and looks like they're rotting from the inside. Or that weird person in the car next to you is glowing purple, and there seems to be strange wisps of energy coming from them. They are monsters, and then based on how you react, either you go kill the dude, or you defend the other person, or you throw yourself in the path of a bullet, or whatever, determines what kind of hunter you become. And then that's the point of the game. You are a normal person who's getting imbued with these powers for a reason you cannot understand from beings known as the messengers, and you have to fight the monsters. It's basically kind of like Buffy the role-playing game, but a little different. There's no watcher. There's no one who's going to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
You have the messengers who communicate with you from time to time, but they'll never tell you what your purpose is. They'll only tell you what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And all these hunters meet each other, and they contact each other over the internet, over a website called hunter.net. And they all have code names for themselves, and there's 7 kinds of hunters. There's actually supposed to be 9, but two of the hunter, they're called creeds, the type of hunter you are. 2 of the hunter creeds are crazy, but it didn't work out right.
Oh, okay.
It didn't, like, the messengers is
They basically retcon them.
No. There's
they're
3
still there. The messengers just can't communicate with them properly.
No, it's not exactly that. It's okay. There's 3 virtues to you, depending on how you view the hunt. There's zeal, mercy, and vision. Okay, zeal is forward, like force.
Mm-hmm.
Mercy is like you're a savior. You want to save people, and vision is you see the big picture.
Okay.
Each of these virtues has 3 creeds that represent themselves inside. So, zeal, the zeal version of the zeal creed is called an avenger, and you kill monsters. That's what you do. The mercy version of the zeal creed is called the defender. You defend people. You protect the innocent from the monsters. You don't necessarily go out to kill them, but you can. But it's only to protect people. And then there's the judge, which is the vision version of the zeal. And the judge basically knows what the monsters does and makes it a punishment appropriate to the crime.
Okay.
Then for the mercy virtue, there's a zeal one, redeemer. There's a zeal one and a martyr, and then there's a redeemer, martyr, and innocent. And they're all 3 aspects of the 3 virtues within themselves. And then finally, the visionary one, there's the visionary. There were 2 others. There was wayward and what's the last one? I don't remember. I don't remember what the last one is, but there's a 9th one that's also vision. It's vision, and wayward and vision together. Zeal and vision together in the vision creed. Wayward is you see monsters all the time, even when there isn't any. So you're just too aggressive. Regular vision, mercy vision is fine. You can see things normally, like your visionary, but then your vision is the input from the messengers is so huge that it breaks you and you go crazy. You can't put it all together.
Got it.
So those 2 virtues didn't work with vision. So they're kind of like they're like the Sabbatian vampire. You're not supposed to play them because you're not supposed to be sane enough as a person to play them. You're not supposed to be able to put it together.
Yeah.
But that's why there's only 7 creeds you can be normally.
That's fair. So that's your favorite one.
I love Hunter. I think Hunter's the best one because you don't need these ones to play Hunter, but it helps. The thing about Hunter is it has its own mythos. It's whatever the ST, which is what the game master for World of Darkness is called. Whatever he wants to take from the other ones, he can throw into Hunter the Reckoning if he wants to. So if you want to be a Camarilla, there's a Camarilla. You want her to be 13 tribes, you want him to be the Veil exists, and things like that. But yeah, Hunter the Reckoning was great. It was one of the... It was the last, I would say, out of the core game lines. Anything after Hunter the Reckoning, I find is, like, off. Like, for example... I hate this fucking game. It's the one I hate the most.
What?
Demon the
The
Fallen.
next one's the one that I hate the most.
Demon the Fallen is fucking terrible. Demon the Fallen was useless, pointless, and destroyed the meta plot. Demon the Fallen is for fucking power gaming twinks.
Got it!
That being said, a lot of people love Demon the Fallen. I just don't. That's just my opinion. I just don't like it. I found it was a completely unnecessary... there's just no reason to be a monster, another kind of monster, to introduce demons. I always like demons as being an X factor in the World of Darkness, being like something you'll never really know about. But with Demon the Fallen, you're basically you're basically the spirits of angels that were sent to hell possessing the human bodies, trying to be good enough to get back into heaven.
Nope.
Most of the time they fail. Most of the time they just get more corrupted.
Yeah.
I never liked it. I tried to give it a chance. I only picked up the Demon the Fallen book because I'm a completist. I'm a collectionist guy. I figured I'd get it. But it was considered one of the main core line books as well. And most of the endgame meta plot involved Lucifer and Demon the Fallen. Now these are all the main core books for the main game lines for the old World of Darkness. There's something for everybody. There's a little splash of flavor for everyone. The thing about the World of Darkness, though, is that it didn't end at the core game books. There was a lot more to it than that. You know how you could pick between 13 clans? Well, sometimes you want more information, other than the little 7 or 8 paragraphs that are in the books. That's why they released certain things called splat books, which were specific the type of creature you were. So, for example, this is a splat book for Clan Book. It's called Clan Book Salubri. This is a clan book for Vampire the Dark Ages for the Salubri clan, which was what the Tremere were before they became vampires. The Tremere hunted this clan down and killed them all.
Interesting.
So there's a bunch of them for all of them, in all the game lines. So, like, there's Clan Book Salubri, but in the modern day, for the regular vampire, there's Clan Book Gangrel, Bruja, Nosferatu, and so forth. For Werewolf, there's Tribe Books. Tribe Book Silverfangs, Tribe Book Children of Gaia, Tribe Book Shadow Lords, and so forth. And it's the same for Hunter. It's the same for Mage. It's the same. There's books for everything. So you could get into more detail about what you're playing. And there's, like, extra powers, more character creation options, things of the sort. How the game works itself is it's 10-sided dice. You have a stat and an ability, kind of like in 7th Sea. So let's say you have a 4 strength and 2 athletics. That's a total of 6. You take 6 10-sided dice. The ST tells you what the difficulty is. So 7, for example. So you roll your 6 10-sided die, and every 7 and above counts as a success. If you make a success, you succeed at the task. The more successes you have, the more spectacular it is. And that's it. Every roll in World of Darkness game is exactly that. It's always success-based. And it is the core mechanic for the entire game. The whole set of games. Now, the other books that are in the World of Darkness is they released a bunch of secondary games. Like Mummy the Resurrection. Or, there's a whole bunch of other, but apparently Adam fucking hates Mummy.
Ugh.
What's so wrong with Mummy?
Just reading it, it's not anything that I was even remotely interested in trying to play.
It is.
Compared to the other ones, that's the problem, is because I have to, I had to compare them all.
Mummy was one of the last ones.
And that's it. Comparing them, I was like,
No.
No.
There's like
I like the storyline behind Werewolf and Vampire and Hunter the Reckoning, and I just didn't like the storyline behind it.
Yeah. Mummy was tacked on in the end. There was other game lines like Kindred of the East, which is basically another entirely different Asian mythical creature that calls itself a vampire, but they're really not even undead. They're just like possessed by Chinese demons, people possessed by Chinese demons or something. But then World of Darkness decided to branch off. They decided to say, well, I wonder what happened during the Dark Ages, before the Camarilla was formed, before all of that stuff. And you have Dark Ages Vampire. So they have Dark Ages Vampire, they have Victorian Age Vampire, they have Werewolf the Wild West, things like that. They have Mage, the Sorcerer's Crusade, which is kind of like a medieval version, medieval people for Mage. There's Fae, Fae the Dark Ages, which is basically Changeling during the Dark Ages. So, they really branched out. There was a lot of fucking games that you could get, and it's sometimes very overwhelming, and I had a lot of it. I made a deal with a dude that I knew online, and he was getting rid of all his game books because he got married and his woman didn't want him anymore. So I get rid of them. And then he was like, well, I have a lot here, and I will give them to you.
Take them all!
I will give them to you for shipping, for the cost of shipping.
Holy shit.
So he got a hold of me, and he was like, okay, it's $80. So I wired him the $80. And then 2 weeks later, 180 World of Darkness game books. I gave most of them to the local comic store for store credit. And I got like almost $800 in store credit. Because some of these were rare, really hard to find. And look at the books I still have.
Yeah.
I still have so many. Like, I kept some that were personal, near and dear to my heart. So, to continue along other things that were available from the World of Darkness for their game lines, you have the setting books for different cities. So you have like Montreal, you have the By Night books. As an example, this is Montreal by Night. There was about a dozen of these: Montreal, Berlin, DC, New Orleans, New York, Mexico City. But some of them were fucking terrible. Berlin by Night is fucking terrible. It is a horrible piece of shit. Well, the story in it is a horrible piece of shit, but the book itself is kind of okay. And then you have things like this: Dark Alliance, Vancouver, which is basically a merger between werewolf and vampire. So you could use this book for werewolf or vampire players. They did have their share of books that would do something like that. You could use it for multiple game lines.
Which is good.
So this explains to you, these explains to you what the political powers are and what the supernatural situation is like in different cities around the world. And they even have, the werewolves have the Rage Across. So they have Rage Across Russia, Rage Across New York, Rage Across Appalachia, where they talk about what the supernatural situation is from the werewolf perspective. Wraith had Necropolis, so there's Necropolis Atlanta. It told you what it was like for the undead of Atlanta and things like that. So they really got into full detail. Another thing that they did a lot was, for example, it's very hard when you're playing an elder vampire to know what they're like. What do they do? What's vampire politics anyways? They would release books like this, Council of Primogen, which explains exactly that. This is how political vampires work. This is what they do. This is the typical thing. This is all the different things you can do. So... And then they had other things where it was not exactly in the games, but that could influence the game. So you had things like gypsies. This is gypsies in World of Darkness, although this book is notorious. This book is notorious for being a racist piece of shit towards gypsies. Apparently so many people of actual Romani descent were so fucking offended by this book that World of Darkness got a ton of fucking hate mail for it. Tons. But all in all, it's a decent book. I don't mind it that much. But there's Mafia, World of Darkness Mafia. What's the Mafia like in the World of Darkness? And the thing about all these books is a lot of them, they did their fucking research. World of Darkness Mafia, they did their fucking research for that book. There is a huge history about underground crime and criminal circles and things like that. There's a book called Lord, Liege, and Lackey for World of Darkness. It explains how the nobility worked in the medieval era, how the clergy worked, and how the peasantry worked, and how their lives, where they did their daily lives. And it was in deep detail. And it was all, and I double-checked some of this stuff, and it was historical fact. They really put some work into some of these books. Mm-hmm. But then you have stuff more neutral books, like Project Twilight and the Bygone Bestiary. Project Twilight is how to create a supernatural hunter that doesn't have any special powers. The Bygone Bestiary, how to create your own monsters and put fantasy creatures in the World of Darkness, because normally they're not in there. Mm-hmm. And then after that, these are all the different supplements they've created. Then you have stuff from Montreal by Night. There's this book called, it's all black, but there's actually a glossy writing there that you can't see very well, but this is called Freak Legion. This is the book of Fomori. Fomori are basically creatures of the pure worm that the werewolves fight, and this book is morbid as fuck. It was created via the Black Dog Game Factory line, which is the symbol that's on the bottom here, Montreal by Night. Black Dog is a definite for adults only series of books, and there was a bunch of them. It was basically about subject matter that was a little too heavy for people, and it had to be adults only. So there's hardcore nudity in there, there's sometimes some really gross horror, things like that. Definitely for adults only. Now, eventually, all good things come to an end. The World of Darkness made a promise since it began. Vampires are scared of Gehenna. Werewolves are waiting for the apocalypse. Mages are promoting the ascension. So, eventually, they had to put their money where their mouth was. And they released 4 books, all dealing with the end of their campaign world, the end of their meta plot. Vampire was called Gehenna, which is the one I have. Werewolf was called Apocalypse. Mage was called Ascension. And then the last one was called Time of Judgment. And in Time of Judgment, tied together Changeling, Hunter, Demon. And just a bunch of other things. Most of these books had 4 different scenarios in them. So you could pick how you chose the world to end in your World of Darkness. After that, the game line kind of died. They released a few books, like Council of Primogen came out after. Mm-hmm. Things like that. But for all intents and purposes, their game lines were all killed. Were all done. Then they decided to create the new World of Darkness, where they had the new versions of Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf, but it was called Vampire the Requiem, Werewolf the Forsaken, Hunter the Vigil, things like that. They're good, but I love me my classic WoD. I love my classic World of Darkness. The last little thing I want to touch about the World of Darkness, stuff that really cool that they did. Game aids. These are books that characters in the World of Darkness might own. And when they made them, they basically made them and made them like they were real. Like, these are fiction.
Yeah, it makes it look like it's a sketch book.
But it makes it look like it's a real book. Like, the Revelations of the Dark Mother, which is what this book is an obscure vampiric tome that's considered like a lost vampiric Bible. And it tells the story of Lilith, the person who gave Cain his vampiric powers and things like that. The Book of Nod, I don't have it, I used to. The Book of Nod is the vampiric Bible. It tells the story of Cain. It tells the story of the antediluvians and all that. It has the prophecies of Gehenna in it. Mm-hmm. This one is called the Silver Record. This book is basically all of the heroes and all of the information of werewolves, their ancient poems, their ancient traditions, are all written in this. And your character might actually own this book, the Silver Record. And now you can. Now you're like, oh cool, this is what my character's actually leafing through. This is what he sees. There's like forewords by fictional characters that are in the setting in there, things like that. So, World of Darkness, like, White Wolf did an amazing job doing all this. But when they finally decided to kill their game lines, they shot themselves in the foot. New World of Darkness worked for a little bit, but eventually people just got tired of it. And White Wolf, because it's a paper industry and we're in a digital age, they ended up being sold to a company called LLC. They're the people who make EVE Online, and they were going to create a World of Darkness MMO, and then they kind of stopped supporting White Wolf. White Wolf no longer exists as a company, actually. Now they're called the Onyx Path Publishing. They basically were bought out by a different company, and now they're back to making books. And they very recently had a series of Kickstarters to create 20th anniversary editions of all their RPGs. These books are over 20 years old. So there was a Vampire 20, V20, which is the current setting that's out now. It's fantastic. They did alter some of the rules. It is basically a new edition. There's Werewolf 20 that's out, Mage 20 that's out. It's rumored that Changeling 20 is going to be out soon. Vampire 20 has a whole bunch of supplements already. It already has like 2 or 3 source books already out for it, with more to come. God bless Kickstarter and Patreons, man.
Kickstarter's keeping the RPG world alive.
Keeping it alive. Because, fuck, man, it's so expensive to print shit.
Yeah.
So, all in all, the World of Darkness is a great place. New or old, you can find anything for you in the World of Darkness. You just have to understand that you are playing the monster. Well, unless you're playing Hunter, then you're not really the monster. but
most of the time, you are playing monster.
But I mean, you are brutally killing these things without caring, right? You're slaughtering these creatures.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the World of Darkness in a nutshell. Overall, it's probably one of my favorite RPG settings overall. I just adore it. It was, when I went to school, I had my textbook, my workbook, and Vampire the Masquerade with me at all times.
Of course you did.
Whenever I would have any spare time at all during class, I'd read the shit out of it. Cover to cover. Over and over and over and over again. And then when I finally got Hunter, I did the same thing. And so forth. I still play it to this day on an online chat room. So shout out to those guys. Unmodchat.com. It is basically when White Wolf shut down. They shut down all their chat rooms, their role-playing chat rooms. And one of the people who worked on the website opened his own. And most of us drifted there. I play a 823-year-old gangrel vampire who is just ridiculously powerful and ancient and terrifying. But yeah, I love it. I love it to death. It's probably one of my all-time favorites, and I'm so excited that Sundays I get to run it again. Our first session will be this Sunday, which I'm really looking forward to. My favorite games in order for the Old World of Darkness are Hunter as the top, Vampire second, Wraith third. Werewolf and Changeling are kind of tied. For fourth, because I don't like one better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mage is fifth, and everything else is better than Demon. But that's my personal opinion. So so for this episode of All on the Table, the games from the Crypt edition, one of the games from the Crypt edition. I'd like to thank the Comic Hunter for becoming an official sponsor for All on the Table. You'll be seeing more of that in the future. The Comic Hunter.
Love them as always.
ComicHunter.net for all of your... if you want to order some comic book back issues, some old RPGs, or some great prices on some Magic singles.
Or read any comic book or board game reviews.
Yeah,
I actually write those.
There may be some people sitting in here that do reviews for that website. I don't know who they are. I heard they were okay.
They're decent.
They're decent.
They're mainly shit, let's be honest.
Yeah, and of course, thank you for Game It All for giving me this opportunity. This was the Old World of Darkness. Next week,
one of my all-time favorite games.
We'll be talking about horror games that involve what is it? What would it be called? Tile placement? No.
I'd say tile placement. Yeah. I would.
Board building, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about several horror games that utilize board game building mechanics where you build the board as you play. Notably Zombies and Betrayal at House on the Hill. So tune in next week and we'll be talking about that. As always, I'm Phatter Phil. This is Fat Adam. And you have a wonderful night. And try not to lose too much humanity out there.